Welcome to this special edition of Behind the Caution Tape. I'm your host, CrashLit, and if you're wondering why we're recording on a Thursday, it's because I'm honored to be joined by USC and University of Kentucky baseball alum and Leisure House founder, Nick Lopez. Make sure to follow him on Instagram at Dimitri.Lopez_ and at Leisure House. That's with two E's at the end. Nick, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you as Behind the Caution Tape's first ever guest.
Oh, I'm so excited, man. Thank you. I feel honored being the first guest, dude. I'm excited for what's to come out of this.
Yeah, same. It's obviously your journey's definitely one that's really fascinating. It's been exciting. And obviously, when, I announced this, you're one of the first people to really, show support, show love. So that means a lot to me. And just really kind of, you've had a cool journey. So I really want to hear about it. And I think a lot of our listeners would like to hear it too. So let's get into this interview.
Let's do it.
So let's kind of take it back to the beginning. What got you kind of into baseball? How old were you when you started swinging a bat?
Yeah, I was 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and I grew up in Santa Ana, so in a very low income area where a lot of, athletes don't really get the best facilities and all that kind of stuff. And my dad played at this one little league called Madison Little League. And that's where I started off my journey. And my older brother, Christian, who's 2 years older than me, I always played up with him. So I was always playing with the 7 year olds as a 4 or 5 year old. And I don't know, I just never really like looked at it as like, oh, I'm in like a low income, I'm 4 years old. I just went out there and played, and I had a blast doing it. And so, growing up in that scenario, it was just like cool to see all the kids come out and have fun. And you go to the snack bar, eating all the Skittles, the hot dogs, all that kind of stuff. And it was pretty cool because I was, getting to know the older guys, like with my brother as I got older. I continued playing up with him until he got into high school. But it started off there, and then I transitioned to Tustin Western Little League, which is now down the street from my house. And that's when I really started to get acclimated with all the baseball stuff and, the baseball families, travel ball and all that stuff. And it was definitely like a big switch. And, as I went on in my journey, that became a common theme of, transferring everywhere. So it was like I was the transfer kid from Madison Little League to Tustin Western Little League, which was kind of funny, ironic. But yeah, when I went there, it was like I started off in Double A, and I met some of my best friends in Double A that I'm still friends with to this day, Adam Schoberg. And it was pretty cool, like getting started off all that and transitioning to a better Little League, you could say. But it was, I wouldn't say better in that sense. It was just more like community based. And once I started playing travel ball, it just kind of took off from there. So yeah, that's kind of the beginning.
Do you think kind of when you were younger, playing with your brother, playing a couple years up, do you think that kind of helped you at all? Kind of just, get acclimated and kind of, help you just kind of get better quicker, just having to play with, better, older, stronger players?
Absolutely, man. And I was not a big kid, even for my own age group. And playing up allowed me to experience better competition earlier. So once I got older and I started playing with my age group, it was like, oh, this is easy. And obviously it's not easy, but I had just experienced the higher level already. So when I got there, it felt like I had been there already, which was a lot easier transition for me.
Absolutely. And then what just made you stay with baseball throughout your, time as a kid, even when, things got tough, maybe you weren't, seeing the playing time you like kind of in your high school days, high school, middle school, kind of growing up.
Yeah, so I actually played soccer growing up as well. And my mom is a huge soccer fan. And honestly, until eighth grade, I was probably a better soccer player than baseball player. All my friends are like, "Oh, like, are you gonna play baseball?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like, I was going to all like the all-star select, like travel team soccer, like it's pretty legit stuff. And like working out at the beach at 7 a.m., running 8 miles like every day, like it was pretty like intense stuff. And I was like one of the best players, and I just felt like I was more comfortable there. Just because I hadn't grown into my strength as a baseball player. So the power was lacking, the arm strength, just being a smaller guy at that time. I was like, oh, I'd be more comfortable playing soccer. And then my dad just always pushed me. Like he's like, if you want to do this, you got to do it right. Like you got to go all in. And obviously, having an older brother that played baseball as well, it was easier to make that decision to continue baseball and not play soccer. But as I got into high school, actually eighth grade, my mom taught at this school called Century High School, also a low income, primarily Hispanic school. And me and my brother was there, and I was in eighth grade when he was a sophomore, and I started playing on the varsity team as an eighth grader. And so I was like, I don't belong here, but like I'm gonna make the most of it. Like in the summertime, I was playing with them, and I was like, you know, not doing great, but like there's some times where I came home and I'm like, dang, like, am I even good enough to play? Um, and I just stuck with it, man. Like I loved the game and I loved being around the guys, and the coaching staff was awesome. And so when I went into my freshman year, I was the starting shortstop as a freshman, and I was the only freshman on varsity. And I started off my my high school career 0 for 31. And it was like the most traumatizing experience because I was like, I'm the starting shortstop, I'm a freshman. Like, why am I'm not doing anything to help the team, like on offense. And I would come home after every game just like crying and like running around like the block and like, listening to music, trying to figure it all out. And I still remember to this day, like when I first got my hit, like the first hit to break out of the slump. And I remember the whole team went crazy. They're like, yeah, let's go. And I was like 1 for 32 at that point. And like, actually, when I hit that jump, it just like continued. Like ever since then, like I never had a problem. I never had a slump like that again. And I always could just find a way to get on base. And that became one of my biggest mottos, like through high school and into college, was just find a way. Like it doesn't matter. Like if I'm 0 for 30, like it doesn't matter. What's your next at bat? How are you going to get it done? And so once I got into my sophomore year, I started growing. I was at this point like 5'10", 5'11". I was a shortstop again, and I actually had a really good year. I hit 464. I led, I think I set the school record for triples in a season, which was like six. And I'm not fast. I just like hit it in the right places, I guess. And then I was like first team all like conference or whatever. So that was like pretty cool to see like stats and like where I compared to all these other players and stuff. And then that's when I made the transition to J Sarah my junior year. I had played travel ball with all these J Sarah guys, and I mean I hit 464, but I wasn't like, oh, like I'm the best thing that ever happened to anything. And like I was like, I still need to like prove I don't know where I stand against these J Sarah kids. These are like the top high school players in the country. And I went and played on a summer ball team, and I like was hitting better than all of them and fielding better. I was playing shortstop and like making all the plays, and I'm like, dang, like I'm just as good as these guys. And like it wasn't like that I was doing better than them. It was more that I could see like how much I've progressed and where I stood against the top players in the country or in the state. And it just like gave me confidence to keep moving forward. And then I ended up at J Sarah, and like it was a pretty interesting transition because I started off my junior year at Century, and then I transferred in like mid-October to J Sarah. I just like left, and obviously I told the coaches and everything, and they were like all for me, going to private school and whatnot. Um, and then I got there, and I was just like, I'm here. Like I shadowed like the week before with this guy named Colin Townsend. And then next thing I know, I'm at the school, which was kind of crazy. And that's where I met my best friend, Michael Curiale, who's with who went to UCLA, and he plays for the Cardinals now. And that's when the J Sarah journey started. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So obviously, yeah. Talk to me just kind of about just taking a gap year after high school and just what your kind of college recruiting process looked like out of high school. Because I'm kind of really interested because you kind of talked about, you kind of dubbed yourself earlier like the transfer kid, and that's kind
Yeah.
of it seems like been a theme throughout your journey. Obviously, I'm going to ask you about it later, but for now, just kind of talk to me about What was it just your kind of recruitment journey like? Kind of just out of high school into college, taking that gap year.
Yeah, so I mean, high school, I hit really well and I played well. I didn't stand out in ways that like most guys do. Like I didn't hit home runs. I wasn't a power hitter. Like I got on base, I got hits, but I wasn't hitting home runs. And I wasn't a big player either for being a third baseman or first baseman. And then on the mound, like I was like 88, 90. I just didn't get enough innings on the mound to get any looks. And I was actually like only the one of the only starting position players on Jay Sarah's varsity team that wasn't committed. And it never honestly like let me down. Like I wasn't like put down because I wasn't committed. Um, I was just kind of like, what am I doing that's, not allowing me to make that next step? Um, and so that's when I kind of decided I was like, well, I could go the JUCO route, but my brother was at junior college and he didn't have the greatest experience there. And I was like, I think I'm just going to take a gap year and I'm going to focus on putting on weight, strength, throwing harder, hitting farther, or whatever. And so I took that gap year and focused on those things. And I also did a mentor job. So I mentored students that were English learners. So their first language isn't English. And so that was very interesting to do because that was like the first time I really got to work up one-on-one with students. And that's what kind of got me into doing like one-on-one lessons as well, is what I do right now as well. Um, so I was playing in a summer league game and I was pitching really well and hitting really well. And this junior college coach that was recruiting me to go to Fullerton JC, I guess he met this coach out in Palm Desert that was visiting, and he was the UIC coach where I ended up going my freshman year. And he's like, "Hey man, like you got to go check out this Nick Lopez guy, like in Irvine, California." We were like playing at IVC, Irvine Valley College, and he came and watched me play. In that game, I went like 2 for 3 with two doubles, one from the right side, one from the left side, and came in to close the game and struck out all three batters. And it was like I didn't know he was there, but I just like every time I went out there, I was like, "Hey, somebody's watching. You never know." And so he came up to me after the game and was like, "Hey man, like you're a great player and like we're interested in like seeing like where you're at and like what you think of like Chicago." And I was like in my head, I was like, "Chicago, like dang, that sounds awesome." And so I went on with the recruiting process and talked to the coaches and whatnot. And uh he was like, I'll call you in a week and we're gonna plan to like have you come on an official visit and stuff. And I'm like, great, let's do it. And so then a week goes by and he calls me and he's like, "Hey, like so sorry, but we went with a junior college guy instead of you. So we don't have any more room for the 2018 year." And so I was like, "Oh man," like I was so bummed. And he's like, "But we have room for the 2019 year. Are you still interested in that?" And I was like, "Yeah, like absolutely. Like, how is that going to work?" And he's like, "Well, you could do that, go JUCO or whatever." And I was like, "Well, actually, I kind of was thinking of doing a gap year, and this is my plan, yada yada yada." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds great, like absolutely." And I was like, "Sweet." And so then I went on with the gap year, and then played in the Northwoods once I finished the gap year, and I played like I want to say 40 games in the Northwoods, and it was every single day playing. And that was like the first time that I played like every single day. And I was like busing 7 hours to North Dakota. I played in Wisconsin, Eau Claire, and it was like crazy. It felt like a minor leaguer. And I'm like, wow, like this is like, I guess what I want to do. And so then ended up at UIC and yeah, from there it was kind of just like everything fell into place at the right time and a lot changed after that though. So yeah.
Gotcha. And then yeah, so you talked about so obviously kind of that gap year sort of worked out as you were kind of considering it. But then obviously you talked about, I think I saw somewhere, I think on one of your videos, talked about COVID hitting, and then you decided to come home and do a year at a JUCO Santa Ana. That's correct.
Yes. So when we came home for winter break during when I was at my freshman year at UIC, I like sprained my ankle like really bad and I thought I broke it. And I'm like limping around everywhere and I'm like, oh man, like I just ruined my chances of starting. So I come back and tell the coaches what happened. They're like, okay, like you're gonna have to like recover, obviously. And then um I was like throwing, like playing catch like on my knees, like just to get my arm to stay healthy. And I want to say like 3 weeks later, I was like good to go. And they had me like start my first game, like a scrimmage at UIC, and I was like pumping like 90, 93, like the hardest I've ever thrown in my life, and like striking out guys. And then on my 30th pitch, I felt like a tear in my use, like I felt like a pull in my elbow, and I was like, "Ooh, that doesn't feel right." It didn't like hurt, it just didn't feel right, which was kind of weird. So then like a dummy, I decided to throw another pitch, and it was like a cutter, and I threw it like 87, and I felt a pull again. And I was like, "Oh, that doesn't feel right." And then like a dummy again, I threw another pitch, and then I felt like an even bigger pull, and like I just walked off the mound, and yeah, I was like, they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "I don't know. I felt this, this, and this, and I think I'm done." And those next like few days are probably like the toughest parts of my career, probably to this day, because I literally thought like I was never going to play baseball again. And I don't know why I thought that, but I was like, oh, I'm literally can't throw. My ankle is all messed up. I can't run. Um, all these things. And I'm like, they're like, hey, you can get the Tommy John surgery. And I was like, I don't know, because then I'd be out for the year. And they're like, well, we also have the PRP injection, which you can get in your elbow, and you could still DH, but it's like a 6 week, I want to say a 6 week recovery, but I don't even think it's that. I think they kind of just were speeding up the process. And so then I went through that, and then COVID hit, and it was like, and I didn't get treated very well after the injury, and that was a big factor of why I didn't want to go back because after the injury, I was just like looking for to my coaches for like any kind of like help or anything, and they just never even talked to me, which kind of sucks, at least the head coach. And then that was a big factor in why I didn't want to come back. And I loved the team, I loved the city, but the way I was treated at the end, it was just like I deserve better than this. And so that's when I decided to go the JUCO route. And like at the time, it was like, oh man, like I this is what I wanted to avoid. Like I didn't want to go JUCO. That's why I took the gap year. And so it was a big decision for me because I was like, one, I could stay at UIC and be comfortable and like, finish my career out there and like that would be great, whatever. Or two, I could go the JUCO route because the transfer portal wasn't a thing, and I can, set myself up to go to my dream school, which was USC at the time. And so I was like, like I'm gonna take a chance on myself. Like, why not? It's my one shot in college. So once I made that decision, it was like, okay, I'm gonna go all in and find my way to USC.
Gotcha. And then, so obviously, kind of, what was that reality like? It seemed like you were trying to, pit to be a two-way player. What was that? How'd you kind of come to terms with that reality of just, realizing you just would only really be able to, pit and then, I mean, field, but you wouldn't get to, pitch?
It was tough at the beginning because I honestly felt like I was a really good pitcher. And so it was tough because I wanted to do both, and that's why I went to school to do both. It just did like once I hurt my arm, it was like I didn't get the surgery, so it wasn't like I knew it was healed. Like it's still, I don't even know if it's fully healed, but um, it was just that like in the back of my head of okay, it could happen again, and then I could really can't like hit at all or do anything like that. So that's when I stepped away from the mound, and I tell a lot of people like my arm's kind of messed up now, and like I don't have the same arm strength or the same arm action I used to have, and every time I tell people I used to pitch, and they're like, "Dude, there's no way. Like, there's no way you pitch like with that throwing motion." I'm like, "Dude, I was 93 off the mound. I'd probably kill you." So it's like it's always like funny to look back at it, but I still wish I pitched to this day. But I'm glad I stuck with hitting versus just being a PO.
I don't think I realized you pitched. I think until I saw your video when you announced you were going to Kentucky after you graduated from
Mhm.
SC. We'll get into that later, but kind of I want to talk to you about USC. You talk about being your dream school. What was it like getting the opportunity to walk on and then earn your spot at USC playing for, first Jason Gill and then obviously the next year Andy Stankiewicz?
Yeah, I mean, it was a dream come true. I was like, I got into the school based on academics, and if anyone knew me in high school, they'd be like, "There's no way this guy could ever get into USC." Um, but once you get into college, it's like a clean slate. Like, at UIC, I took care of my grades, and junior college, I think I pretty much got all A's. Um, and so I set myself up to be able to, go to a place like of that caliber academically. And so when I got in academically, I was like, wow, like I legitimately got in. Like, this is awesome. And then I got the opportunity to, walk on, like preferred walk on. And so what that means is like the coaches know that you're like coming to the team. It's not like you just randomly show up. So it was pretty cool to, go and meet all the guys and see all like where everybody came from, other junior colleges, other um, transfers from other universities and come together as a team in 2022. And I'm still best friends with DeAndre Smith to this day. And like we talk about 2022 being like one of the most like close teams we've ever been on to this day. And like I love that team. Like they were awesome. Like every single guy on there was amazing guy. And I wish I could go back because like it was so much fun. But just like being a part of something like that, it was really cool because obviously I always wanted to be a part of a Nike school, and like getting all the Nike gear was really cool, and like playing on Dado was absolutely beautiful. The turf, or not the turf, the grass, the dirt was just perfect, and felt like a celebrity. You're just like treated like a real D1 athlete. And it was really cool to, go to Little Galen all the time. And the coaches, gave me the opportunity and they treated me well. And, we unfortunately didn't, have the year that we wanted. But I feel like if we had another shot at it with that same team, the same coaching staff, like we would have done something special. So 2022 was definitely like a one to remember for sure.
How did you find yourself kind of fitting in with those guys? I mean, you kind of talked about with DeAndre, but then also how about some of those other guys that you got to play with every day? I mean, I'll just say I had a ton of fun. Like that was my first year at USC and like really going to those games and being out there every day once I got really
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still best friends with Emilio Rosas as well. One of my best friends to this day, and like he was really fun to be around. And Rylan Thomas was our starting center fielder. Adrian Colon Rosado, like he was my hotel roommate. Like whenever we traveled the next year. Trevor Halsma, I see him all the time. Tyler Lozano, I see him all the time. Who else was on? Miko, Johnny Olmstead. I can go on and on, but like all those dudes were awesome, and we all hung out with each other. Charlie Hurley, Matt Keating was my roommate. Oh, Matt, I love that guy. And Cole Gabrielson, like I can go on and on about these guys, and just like true competitors and dogs. And we were at the alumni game for the football game this past November, and it was so cool to see everybody back in town. And it was just a great group. And, I'm so glad that that was my first year of experience with those guys.
You're really taking me back to kind of my first time there with like crazy. I mean, how many of those guys? Obviously, I mean, I get there, your age, but still, like, how many of them are now like on to their next chapter of their careers or their lives, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy to think about. Because
Yeah.
I'm now
It's,
here a
it's,
senior, and like that was 3 years ago when I was a freshman.
yeah, like time flies, man. And that was when I was a junior, and I was like, I didn't realize, like, in the moment, I was like, dang, like these practices are so long, the season's taking forever. And next thing you know, it's like almost 3 years later now, and it's like, wow, like
Yeah,
time really flew.
absolutely. And then kind of now I want to talk about kind of your second year. How was that just different from the first, especially the coaching change from Jason Gill to Stankiewicz, and then kind of obviously some of those older guys, you first came here are moving on. Then, there's new guys, few transfers, obviously, just especially with, how the portal's working now, like at this point in, college.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, my last year at SC was definitely one to remember as well because that was coaching changes. We had, I mean, the whole coaching staff. It wasn't just Jason Gill that was replaced. It was every single coach. And so at this point in my career, this was the fourth coaching staff that I had played for in 4 years of baseball. So I had never been a part of a team where I came back the next year and it was the same exact coaching staff, which is kind of crazy to think about. And so the dynamic was a lot different. The way they went about business was a lot different. And the guys that they brought in were awesome. They did really well for us. Caden Naoki is one that comes to mind that he was from Notre Dame and he was one of our best pitchers that year. Blake Soderston, Connor Aoki. What else we got? Brian Jackson, Bryce Grudzlianic, Austin O'Verne, he's a Tuscan guy. Um, who else we got in their team? Jacob Galloway. I mean, Stromsburg, Hoopen Gardner, Jaden Agassi, like all those guys were a great addition to the team. And, some of those guys were returners. And it was just cool to like be back on the same team and see some of the guys that you already know and like all the new guys come to you to get acclimated. So I made it a priority to make sure everybody felt comfortable with the team and like showed them around and I went out of my way to make sure like they got the same experience that I got when I first came. And so I thought that was pretty cool for them to experience because, coming to a new school, especially like USC, like it's especially coming from like out of the country or not out of the country, out of the state, or out of the area, it's like it's pretty like scary. You're just like, wow, it's like USC. Like, the history is insane and the alumni is insane. It's like, oh my gosh, like where do I even start? So it was cool being like one of the veteran guys on the team. And Andy and the rest of the coaching staff did a great job with what they could have done, especially for their first year. We made Pac-12 playoffs for the first time, which was really cool. Got some cool Lululemon bags, and it was a blast. I mean, graduating was something that I had been looking forward to since freshman year of college, especially when I took my first test ever. I was like, man, I can't wait to graduate. And when I finally did it, it felt so good to just know that like all the hard work paid off and like, I stuck with it. And like, it's not easy, graduating from anywhere, especially USC. So it was like pretty cool to be like the first person in my family to graduate from USC and pretty cool.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Feels like a lifetime ago, but thanks.
So yeah, and then obviously I wanted to, so you kind of hinted at this or just really just kind of said like, so even though it was only your second year there, you really kind of took on more of a leadership role your senior year and your second year at USC.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And then and then what are some of your favorite moments, just both baseball and non-baseball, just what are your favorite like USC moments, like both on and off the field?
I'd say on the field was probably our first game of the season. Um, I remember like Bryce hit a home run, and I think we took the lead or tied the game or something. It was the first time I've seen Dado like packed out, and it was like the roar of the crowd, and I was on deck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, let's go! He like ties the game. Um, and then like I was up next, and then I hit a back-to-back homer, and like we took the lead, and like it was an amazing experience, like just seeing the whole dugout. Like throughout the fall, you get separated into two teams. And so throughout the whole fall, you're kind of like, oh yeah, we're better than you guys, this and that. And then once you come together, it feels like you got two like really good teams that were away from each other that came together, and now you're playing against another team. And so all like the rah rah and the energy is all in one place now, and you saw it like come out like when we played another team. So that was honestly one of my favorite moments of just being just seeing the roar of the team and the crowd like all together. It was like awesome. Like I was like, dang, this is peak college baseball in my head, and I was like, this is sick. Um, and I'd say off the field, hmm, honestly, Little Galen was probably like the most underrated, like cool spot. Like every morning you're like texting like your teammates like, hey, little G at 9 or little G at 10. It's like you go there and you spend like an hour and a half of like getting some food and like chopping it up and catching up. And I loved going to little G just to like even just like get like a water and you just talk with your friends. Like that's what kind of culture and environment it created was just like a hangout spot, which is really cool.
Didn't it also allow you to like meet other athletes? Because from what I've understood, like it's like where a lot of athletes have gotten to know each other. At least I've never
Yeah.
been, so I don't know. But from what
Yeah.
I've heard from like athletes, I do know you, and then obviously people on like the other teams I've had classes with or have gotten to know over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. You meet, football guys, soccer players, volleyball, basketball, like everybody comes in to eat at the same place, which is pretty cool. It's like um, you see somebody that was in your class, and then next you know that you're at Little G together with them, and it's like, oh, what's up? Like you're in my class, right? And like you start talking with them, or if you're like, you're hanging out outside of school past academic hours, you see somebody out and then you see them the next day, you're like, hey, what's up, dude? It's so it's always cool to like have um meet new people in that way. And Lil G kind of was that space that everybody knew that you could always like meet somebody new at. So it was really cool.
Yeah, it sounds super like really cool environment. But what
Hmm.
did you get? So kind of a what did you get your degree in from USC, and then what did you get your master's in at Kentucky? So obviously I'll kind of move into that chapter now. But yeah.
Yeah. I got my degree in communications. So I went into college thinking I was going to be a physical therapist, and that was shot down a weekend or after my first chemistry exam. Um, that's when I knew I didn't want to go down that route. I failed miserably, and I was like, wow, this is not what I want to do. I mean, it was, but I was not willing to go through chemistry and calculus at the same time for my freshman year. I was like, that's way too much for me. And so that's why I decided to do the communications. And I actually got my associates as well from Santa Ana. So I have 3 degrees technically, which is kind of funny. I use that to like, tell my older brother and my parents or my siblings like all the time, like, oh yeah, I got 3 degrees, man. Like it's just some banter. But so communications at SC, and then I got business at Kentucky. That's how I got on to the business with Leisure House as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna talk to you, ask you about Leisure House well, because I remember you started there around the time you like kind of were making that transition to Kentucky. But I kind of want to just first talk about the baseball, then we'll kind of get into the Leisure House and everything you're doing
Yeah.
currently. But I really was curious because I remember seeing that video you put out just announcing you going to Kentucky. I fully like I don't I mean, I'll just be honest. Like I've learned just not to blame anyone for doing what they think is best for them. I won't lie, I was bummed, like, not getting to see
Yeah.
Nick play every day next year, but I was happy for you at the same time. Like, and obviously, SEC seems really attractive. So what just intrigued you about and made you want to head out to SEC country?
I wanted to be I just wanted to like be a part of the best conference in college baseball, and that's the SEC. I've always wanted to play like in against like a Vanderbilt or Tennessee or all those schools because at UIC we played Vanderbilt my freshman year, we played Auburn my freshman year, and then we played Auburn at SC again. And so I was like, man, like if because I was hoping to get drafted, obviously. And I was like, I'm not doing another year of college baseball. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm 23 already. Like, I shouldn't be playing college baseball anymore. And so when I didn't get drafted, it was kind of like, oh, dang, like, what's next? And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like go all go all in it, go all in and try to get into the SEC. And so I was actually talking to Arizona at the time. I want to say like June-ish. And something just didn't like feel right. I was just like, I don't know if I like want to come here because I was like, it's a Pac-12. Like it was one of my only offers at the time, and I was like, like I just don't know. And so this is like the Chipotle story that, I've told people about. And I was at Chipotle with my buddy Andrew Parker, and we're leaving the Chipotle and, dab each other up, like, I'll see you later. And then out of nowhere, this like lady like appeared, like, I swear, like out of the bushes or the wall or something. And she's like, hey, like, I saw your USC shirt and like, I just wanted to come say like hello. And like, I thought I was wondering if I could pray for you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. She's like, I'm so sorry to bother you. Like, I have family that went to SC and like, I just felt like I needed to say a prayer for you. And I was like, sure. And I was a little sketched out because I'm like, we're in a Chipotle parking lot. Like, the heck? And so then she like puts her hand on me and like starts saying a prayer. My buddy Andrew's like in his car, like I could see out of the corner of my eye, he's like recording and like laughing so hard at me, and I'm just like there, just like with my head down, and it was pretty like crazy. And she's like, what do you want me to pray for?" And I was like, my baseball career. And I just said it like that. I was like, my baseball career? I don't know. And she's like, okay. And then she like said the prayer or whatever, and then she's like, "Oh, so nice to meet you." And then like I turned to like look at Andrew, and he's like laughing. He's like, "No way." And I turned to my right, and the lady's gone. And I'm like, what the heck? I was like looking around. I was like, where'd she go? And so I didn't really think anything much of it. And then I go to this place called Yogi's Chicken Teriyaki, best chicken teriyaki I've ever had. Um, and so I'm sitting there and I'm like on my phone and I get a Twitter DM and I see Kentucky baseball. I'm like, am I seeing this right? Kentucky baseball? And I'm like, I open it and it's like the hitting coach, Coach Nick Emirati, who is literally hands down the best hitting coach I've ever had. And I love that guy and he's helped me so much. And I'm like, Kentucky baseball, like I start doing my research. I'm like looking them up and I see a $50 million facility. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that looks unbelievable. They had been to the Supers the year before or that past year and they faced like Paul Skeens and all that, like at LSU. Unfortunately, they lost to LSU, who ended up winning the national
Hmm.
championship. But I'm like, dang, like they got to the super regionals. Like you dream of even just like getting into regionals. Like we never even got into playoffs. Like in my 4 years of college baseball, so like being able to like make it to the playoffs, I was like, dang, that seems like so cool. Um, so then, like, I responded to the DM, and next thing I know, I'm on the phone with Nick Amorati, and then next thing you know, I'm on the phone with Coach Cozino. Next thing you know, I'm on the phone with Coach Nick Mingione, who's the best coach ever. And it was the easiest yes I've ever made because they made me feel like a part of the team already before even like stepping on campus, and they treated me like family, like asking me all these questions about my family and this and that. And I'm like, wow. And it was a no-brainer. I was like, dang, like I'm coming here. Like this is where I want to go. So yeah.
That's a really like interesting experience. I mean, I played sports in high school. I never, didn't, I went the academic way for school. So I don't really know anything about, but it just seems like there can just be like kind of crazy times you'll just get a text or something and just can kind of really lead to a big opportunity.
It changes in the flip of a switch, I'll tell you that. Like that's why I always tell like our posts on Instagram, like stick to the plan, like keep working, like you never know what could happen. And that was one of those things, like I was pretty distraught because I hadn't been talking to many teams, and like obviously I wanted to go to the SEC, and the only school that seemed interested was Arizona, and I'm like, I don't really want to go to a Pac-12 school again. You know what I mean? Like nothing against Arizona, it was awesome. Like I would have loved to play there, but I just didn't want to play in the Pac. I felt like I needed to move up. If that made
Hmm.
sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean,
Um,
obviously, just with how the SEC's kind of just dominated college baseball over like the last like last 5 to 10 years.
yeah. And so it's like I looked at the trajectory of SEC and like the last like five or six national championships have been from an SEC team. And so I was like, I need to get on one of those and like give myself the opportunity to, win a national championship. So that's why I was all in on Kentucky.
Absolutely. And then I remember I saw on, I think, Leisure House, you talked about road tripping out to UK. What was that trip like?
Oh man, that was the most brutal drive I've ever made. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but it was just like, man, it was like, are we there yet? Kind of deal. And I was like, every time I had to just like, this is my advice, if you're on a road trip for that long, it was like 33 hours. Don't look at the clock. Don't look at the time. Don't look at the maps. Just like get lost in the music, listen to a podcast. That's like the best thing. Like when you forget that you're driving, obviously you need to still pay attention to the road, but like when you forget that you're like traveling and then next like 3 hours has gone by and you're like, oh shoot, like I'm almost there. Versus like you're driving and looking at it every like 2 minutes, you're like, oh my gosh, I still got 9 hours left. Um, that's where I went wrong. I like to look at the time and see like where I'm at. And I just looked at it too often and I'm like, oh my gosh, I still got 11 hours left. And I was just like, oh. And so it was fun though. Definitely something I've always wanted to do. And that's why I wanted to do it by myself because I wanted to like prove to myself that I could do it. If that makes sense. So
Absolutely. I mean, I've done a few road trips myself, but none that long. I think the longest one's like 7 hours to Mammoth. And that
yeah.
was like when
Oh,
I've during left during rush hour, so you know.
yeah.
But it's like I
That
found like on some drives like to Vegas, you throw on a podcast for a couple hours and you're just like, oh wow, like that killed a couple hours. That made it go faster.
yeah, absolutely. So it
Yeah.
was definitely a fun experience and obviously I had to drive back as well. So that was fun.
And then so yeah, so now let's talk to me about just your first few days at Kentucky. What was that like? You kind of talked about how you just felt really welcomed even before really going there by the coaches. How'd you fit in with your new teammates?
I mean, they welcomed me just as well as the coaches did, and it was truly like it was actually this is a really funny story, but I typed in the address, so the whole time I was going to this address that I thought was my house, and I end up in this really nice neighborhood, like way too nice to be where I was at. I was like, this looks nothing like the picture that they sent me. So I'm like pulling up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is my house? It was like a mansion. And so I'm like parking and I'm about to walk up and I hear like dogs barking. I'm like, oh shoot, like they didn't tell me they had dogs at the house. And my roommate Grant Smith, who was our starting shortstop, he said he had a white truck, white Ford with blacked out rims. And I'm like, Grant, I texted him, you got a white Ford with blacked out rims, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm here. Like, like I think I'm here. And so I'm like walking up and I just hear like um voices and it was like girls' voices and I'm like, oh, I don't think this is the right place. And I was like 20 minutes like away from like where I was supposed to be. So then I was like, oh shoot. Turn around and I drive to the actual house and I get there and like all the guys were there. There was like seven guys. Like we had two houses. One of them was mine. One was the other house with I think there was like five other guys there. And so they all like helped me. Well, they offered to help me with all my stuff and like I was like, "Oh no, it's all good. Like you guys don't need to help me." And then like opened my back door and I'm like, "Oh man, it's a lot of stuff." And I was like, "You know what? Like a little help wouldn't be so bad." And like, "Yeah." I mean, they made like putting all my stuff in my room in under like 20 minutes. It was like the greatest thing. It went from like a 2 hour job to like a 20-minute job. And it was like, that was the first experience I had. It's like, man, these guys are awesome. Like, they were willing to help me before like they even know me. Like, you could easily just be like, oh, yeah, like, I mean, even if they didn't offer, I probably would have not even thought anything of it. But the fact that they did, it showed like what kind of team I was getting introduced to. And it was just like really like refreshing to see like guys going out of their way to like help a new guy, move in. And so like right away I learned very quickly like how you know, got, the guys were so willing to go out of their way for no reason. And it was like that the rest of the year. Like that's just how the standard and the culture was at Kentucky.
So they really just, even though it seemed like you already were, they just really are trying to get everyone who's new to just really buy into the culture. And it seems like they just have a really strong culture. I mean, obviously, I mean, you guys won a lot of games, but even just these minor things that you don't see on the screen or at the stadium is like seems to help make that sort of difference and really helps the new guys like you buy in.
Absolutely. And that starts with the coaching staff. Like they set a standard and they created a culture that that's just what they do. And so like it was so easy to be a part of it because it was like that was just like what they did, you know, like if you didn't do that, you were, you know, called out like, hey, this is the way we do things. If you're not going to learn how to do these things, then you can, get out of here. But it was really cool just to like see that kind of standard be set early, and it showed a lot later on in the season of like us buying into what the coaches are teaching, the players are following, and that's why I think it's a big reason why we ended up in the College World Series because we took care of the details just as like helping somebody out.
Okay, gotcha. And then what was it like just getting to see yourself just become a major contributor day in and day out with the Wildcats? Because obviously, I mean, I got to see you play once or twice. I think near the end of the season, I was like, it's really cool actually just to get to see you on TV because my dad really gets into like baseball once a year, especially
Yeah,
like as like the in that final stretch leading up to the playoffs. So we happened
yeah.
to watch Kentucky once. So it just wasn't like getting to see yourself become a major contributor just day in and day out.
It was honestly an unbelievable experience. Like the first day I saw my name in the lineup, I was leading off and playing third base, and I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like my first game in the SEC is me leading off and playing third base, and I'm like, I could have not drawn this up myself. And so as the season went on, like before the season, we write down in journals and we write down a person goal, a player goal, and a student goal. And so my player goal was to be for like a first team or all I didn't put first, I put all SEC and all American as my player goal. And then my person goal was to do like 5 to 10 podcasts with the players. And then my student goal was to be like a 3.5 GPA or higher. And so like writing it down and seeing it there in like plain sight. And I had written this down at SC and all these places, but like it never happened. But I just stuck to it. Like this is what I was gonna do. Like one day I'm gonna be, all American or whatever it is, and see it come to life. Like that was honestly like insane. Like I manifested it. Like I truly believed that I could do it. And just like showing up to the ballpark and seeing like fans already at the field at like 4 p.m. for a 7 p.m. game, like the fans, Big Blue Nation is probably like one of the best environments like I've ever been a part of, and it was so cool to experience like 10,000 fans in a stadium. Um, at SC, like when it was packed out, it was like 1,500 to 2,000 fans, which is a lot still. But like these SEC stadiums, they got like 8 to 10,000 fans every weekend. It's like holy smokes, this is way different. So it was easy to kind of like I feel like some people like don't like to step into like the bright lights. Like, when there's a lot of people, a lot of pressure, people tend to like crumble. But for me, it was like, oh, this is like my stage. I get to go up there and do my thing, and just more people are watching. So that's why I felt like I was able to perform my best because one, we had practiced an insane amount and we had a team that was fully committed. We had a culture that was amazing. We had a coaching staff that truly believed in every single player. And so every time I stepped out onto that field, it was just like freeing. I could just go out and play. I didn't have to worry about anything else.
I've heard those SEC stadiums are just no joke, even for baseball. So it's like my
Yeah.
brother was like almost went to Georgia. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but he toured the school, went to I think their spring football game, and then one of their home baseball games, and it was like blew him away with just how just that environment there.
Yeah. It's there's nothing like SEC football or baseball. It's just unbelievable. So
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend going and checking out a game if you have a chance.
Might have to, especially with a few USC guys out there. I mean, Eric Hammond's now at Georgia, Jacob
Yeah,
Dow at A&M, so might
yeah,
have to one of these days.
yeah,
Anyways,
absolutely.
let's get back to you now. Enough about me. So I want to talk about Leisure House now because you kind of talked about as one of your, one of your goals. So you started kind of going into Kentucky, and then what inspired you to start, and then just how has it evolved? Because from how I've seen it on social media, and I know I don't know every, and how I've seen it, it just seems like it's kind of just there's multiple branches of it now that's kind of just evolved from kind of what you started it as.
Yeah. So at the beginning, it started off like just doing like posting motivational stuff and like quotes and stuff, and then I kind of it was a big step for me because I hadn't really done like podcasts or anything. I didn't know much about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do a podcast. And like I had been watching Mookie Betts's podcasts on base, and I really liked how he was interviewing players and getting an insight on players during the season. And I'm like, huh, like what if I did that for college baseball? And so that's why I started interviewing my teammates. And, we had a very diverse group of guys in the sense of like we had guys from Arizona, Northern California, Southern California, Florida, Maryland, like all over the place. And so I thought it would be like pretty cool to like see how these guys ended up in the SEC. We had a guy that was from UCI, which is the Big West. We had a guy that was from D2, JUCO, a guy that had labrum surgery. Like there's really cool stories, and I wanted to bring them to life. And I thought that would be a cool way to do it. So I started off with that, with the podcast and then the blogs. And now I just like do camps, clinics, individual hitting lessons, and try to get into a baseball facility and have my own facility at some point. Um, and so like the goal is to inspire as many high school youth players, college players, professional players as possible, and using the platform that I have to do so. And so in sharing my story and kind of showing that anything is possible because, I was able to get to where I am. And so I don't, if you follow the same things, I feel like you can get to wherever you want to go if you truly believe in it. So that's kind of like the basic stuff about Leisure House. And obviously it's still growing a lot right now. And as I move into the next chapter of my life, I'm excited for it to really like get going. So
Mhm. Yeah, because I kind of want to follow up on a couple aspects of it. I was gonna say one till later, but I think it's appropriate now. Just move it up here now. Was you've kind of you're coaching a little bit too, right?
yeah.
And then I know you have my brother once. How has that kind of kind of gotten into sort fallen under the umbrella of Leisure House?
For the coaching side,
Yeah.
so I do like individual hitting lessons right now,
Mhm.
which is really fun because I really get to connect with the players that I work with, and I use a lot of Rapsodo technology, and um, I think the way that I train these players is like allowing them to be themselves, and like I feel like a lot of these players are playing for coaches that don't allow them to be themselves in the sense of like can't even talk. So I'm like trying to get them to open up. I was just asking like questions about how school was and a lot of things outside of baseball. So that way, it shows I'm not just here to just, put a ball on the tee and see you swing. So there's a lot more that goes into the coaching aspect, and that's what I take pride in and making sure everybody that comes and hits with me or comes to a camp or a clinic, they are um, experiencing a really fun environment and competitive environment. And I do the best to give the players the best experience they've ever had, and that means like bringing donuts to a group hitting lesson. Then that means that I got to do that. So I'm willing to go above and beyond for all the guys that I train.
Gotcha. And then my other question about it is kind of what's it? I've noticed you've been signing like guys. Like I noticed DeAndre Smith was one of those guys you signed. What does that kind of mean? And what does that mean for both you and as well as the athlete you sign?
So it kind of just goes into like if I'm hosting a camp and some or something. They're part of like the Leisure House coaching staff, and like they help me run these clinics, these camps, help promote my stuff on social media, and I promote their stuff on social media. And these guys are like my best friends as well. So it's just like creating a environment of like, okay, I'm not just the only one you get to come in contact with. Like we have all these great guys that are playing baseball currently and that are helping me out create this business. So it's been cool to have like other people involved in it as well.
Gotcha. And then so one other thing I noticed is like really made you stand out is the mustache. You know, I had to bring
Yeah.
this up, especially because I've noticed you've really incorporated it into your Leisure House branding these days. So kind of how is it kind of like, kind of how have you like really made it sort of like your whole like sort of your brand, I guess, in some regard, like, make you stand out.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I wanted to do when I got to Kentucky was stand out. And I thought like growing out my mustache again would be a cool way to do it, especially since I haven't had a mustache during the season in any of my years in college. So I was like, yeah, I'll just do something different for my last year. Like, who cares? We'll see what happens. And then it just became kind of like a fan favorite thing, and fans were showing up with mustaches to the games, and little kids were wearing fake mustaches and the same glasses that I was wearing, and like had signs up with Nick Lopez, and it was pretty cool to see like the impact that I made and on these fans that are just watching the game. And that's why I take pride in the things that I post, because you never know who's watching. That little kid could be watching, see a post, and like next thing you know, he's like, I want to go do this now. And like, that's why I think it's important to, push out good content that is going to be relatable, and then inspires people to be the best version of themselves.
Absolutely. And
And
I
so
know,
then also, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, you finished. Sorry, I thought you were done, but go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because then during playoffs, I dyed it blue. And that was kind of just like a fun addition to what Kentucky baseball was about. And it was like, um, having fun. And so we had pink hats. We were doing like funny stuff during the game. We had something going on every inning, whether it was like bubble gum third, which meant like everybody had to pick a bubble gum, or um, we would do, what was the other one? Um, there was just the Rattling Bog. Like we'd have like water, and we'd be like, drinking water with the Rattling Bog song playing. Like there's a lot of cool things we did, and I thought like bringing dye my mustache blue would be just a cool addition to it. And the fans started wearing blue mustaches, and our mascot wore a fake blue mustache, and
That is awesome.
it was pretty cool. Like just like I'm not really paying like I do pay attention to those things. Like I'm not like unaware of it, but like I'm trying to focus on the game. But like seeing all that, I'm like, that is so cool. I love that the fans are like all into it.
Yeah, I mean that was what I was gonna ask you about, just dyeing the mustache blue because they went. I don't know how much you saw in like TV clips. They went out of their way to like show you a bunch, like
Yeah,
last
I
year
I
during the
ended up
playoffs.
I ended up seeing a lot of stuff on that, and it was pretty cool. Like listening to the announcers like talk about like my mustache, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm just trying to hit.
So I feel like that sometimes you do something unusual. It's like people take notice of it. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, yeah, especially with the caution tape.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why do you think I named my podcast Behind the Caution Tape?
Yeah, that's so smart.
Yeah. Credit to my dad, actually. I'll give a shout out to him. He was
That's
the one who's like
awesome.
suggested it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I want to get back to a couple things with baseball. So like, what was it like getting to obviously, get to, experience go all the way to the College World Series and get to experience Omaha. What was that like?
It was honestly a dream come true, because Omaha is kind of like this yellow brick road, like kind of fantasy that, everybody talks about, but like you don't really know how you get there. Like you think, oh, I guess we just got to be the best team in the country. Yeah, that's one way, but like um the way that we went about our business and like it made it seem so much more obtainable. And every year, every program you go to, they talk about going to the College World Series, obviously. But I think what made it so real was one, being in the SEC, you get like a better opportunity to go there. And two, like our team was really good. Like we had a lot of good players. We had a lot of veteran guys. But we did like what it took to get there. And we like paid attention to the details and all that stuff. And finally getting there, it was almost like a vacation kind of like deal. Like when you go to like Cabo for the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool. So like when we got to the College World Series, like I'm like walking around the stadium and like I'm just like in awe of everything, like looking around, like you're looking at like the beach or something, like when you're in Cabo for the first time, and like it was like, wow, this is gonna be like filled up. Like this is pretty cool. And like the media day stuff was like honestly, I pretended like I wasn't like that excited for it, but like you got interviewed by ESPN reporters, you got media day videos, photos, TikToks, like the whole shabam, and it was like really cool to experience that in itself.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then what was it like just getting to see yourself named to the first team All SEC? You talked about just making the All SEC team was like your goal, but what was it like to make it to like the first team, be like kind of that best group of guys from the conference?
Honestly, it was a true honor, and I mean, there's so many great players in the SEC, and um, it felt so much more. Um, hmm, it felt so much better because I felt like I had like earned it in the sense of like all the years that I've played and like working my butt off and like, manifesting it, writing it down. And just seeing it come into fruition was like really cool. And the way I found out was we had like a team dinner at like this steakhouse called Malone's, like really nice steakhouse. Um, and my coach just comes up to me and like I thought like I was in trouble. Like he's like, "Hey Nick, like I need you to come over here." And I'm like, or he's like, "We need to talk after the dinner." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like what did I do?" And so I go up and he starts talking to me. He's like, "Hey, like just want to congratulate you. You were named first team All SEC." And like he gave me like a big hug and like I was like, "No way, like this is unbelievable." Like I was holding back tears. I was like, "Dang, like this is really cool." Um, and so like just like having that recognition, like for putting in, it wasn't just like this year's of work. It was like all the years that I've been practicing and playing. Like it felt like it all kind of almost paid off in that sense of like finally getting some recognition for my play, which was really cool.
Yeah, and then you kind of talked about just, sort of just kind of your college journey, and it was seems like kind of could be was a bit of a roller coaster, and then, four schools, 5 years, then five coaching staffs in 5 years too. I mean, I didn't even think
Yep.
about that never crossed my mind. I mean, I talked about people your name came up in conversations when, especially transfer portal with football these days is a big topic
Yeah.
with guys switching schools every year, but kind of want to ask someone who's been through it, like what was that like for you just to, go through that, like sort of just new school like that often?
I kind of embraced it to be honest. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, like me transferring little leagues was kind of like the first point of my life where I started like as a little foreshadow of what's to come. So I was kind of used to it. I transferred little leagues, I guess you could say. Um, I went to one, three middle school or one elementary and two middle schools, and then I went to two high schools, and then I went to four different colleges in 5 years. So change is like something that I really embrace, and I think a lot of people should embrace change because it's like an opportunity to continue learning from some other people or some other business or some other team or some other coaching staff. Like there's so much good that can come from change, and I feel like a lot more people should embrace it.
Absolutely. And then I wanted to ask you, like, were you ever thinking about going pro after Kentucky, and what was that process like? And are you still considering, or did you just decide not to pursue that path?
Definitely, I think every player's goal is to get drafted and play professional baseball, but unfortunately, like that didn't really pan out the way that I expected it to. There's a lot of factors that go into it, including age and all kinds of other things. So, the first couple months of not getting drafted, it weighed on me a lot, just because like I felt like I did all the right things to get drafted, and obviously it was first team All SEC, All American. I was like, what else do I need to do? So I had to come to terms of like, this just isn't the path that you're going to go down. Um, so I was also thinking about like playing indie ball, but indie ball is a tough road to go down, especially as a position player, because a lot of players that go and play indie ball don't really make it out of there, and the pay is not great. And so I wanted to really dive into something. I was like, I need to go all in on something. And so that's kind of when I started really trying to dive into Leisure House and seeing what I could do with it. And I knew if I went and played indie ball, that I wouldn't be able to continue what I wanted to do with Leisure House the way I would want it to be. Um, but I did get another opportunity, and I'm not allowed to share it, so it's kind of a secret.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so there is a great opportunity, and it involves baseball, obviously. It's a new wave of baseball, and once it's posted, I'll be able to share it. But as of right now, I have to keep it under wraps. But I'm excited to, go down that route. And I think where going down that route allows me to continue to do Leisure House, and it allows me to be on a way bigger platform than playing indie ball. So it's cool. I mean, I wish I could share it right now, but unfortunately I can't. But it is really cool, and I think a lot of people are going to be really excited for what's to come, and I'm really excited. And so it's going to be really cool to get that started and be able to, really showcase the mustache again.
Absolutely. And I know, like, obviously you can't talk about that one, but I know you do have another opportunity that starts soon. Is you're joining Bleed Blue Network to contribute to their coverage of Kentucky baseball. Is that correct?
Yep, I'm gonna be doing that as well. So,
Yeah. So what's that been
um,
experience been like of, getting hired, getting to go back to Lexington? When do you head back out?
so that I should be going back in like January. That's gonna be really cool to be able to do that as well. And I love Lexington, and so I just excited to be able to talk about baseball and do all that kinds of stuff. So, I'm excited for that opportunity again.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then what's your role with them? Like, what role are you gonna have like in there with them as a reporter, analyst, play-by-play guy?
Baseball insider host for like a baseball podcast. So I'll be doing like a baseball podcast for Kentucky baseball as well.
That's gonna sounds really
So
cool. I'm gonna have to subscribe to
yeah,
that. You kind of
yeah,
honestly just
absolutely.
following your journey's got me sort of interested in Kentucky baseball.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool things that come out of Kentucky baseball,
Yeah,
and I'm really grateful for that opportunity to just even have played there. So
yeah. So I
it's
kind
really
of want to
cool.
jump to USC a little bit, actually talk about their baseball because they're transitioning actually, to the Big Ten this year. So based on what you've been seeing from, team, the schedule, what do you think is the key to their success in their first season as Big Ten members?
It's definitely a tough transition, I would say, for them. But I think from what they had to experience last year of traveling every weekend because of not having a field, I think that puts them at a disadvantage of not having home field advantage pretty much anywhere. Although they get to play at the Great Park and that kind of stuff, but it's not the same when you're not at your true home park. So I think that puts them at a slight disadvantage. But where what I know about Coach Stank is that he's very gritty, and he's gonna get these guys like competing every game. And I think a lot of these teams are gonna think that USC's they're, falling apart. They're not, they're not the same USC they were in 1960s or 2000s or whatever. And I think these guys are going to come out hungry. And I know Ethan Hedges and Mikey Ebner and plethora of other guys are going to really, set the standard there, and they're going to help the team be great in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And then a few more questions, then we'll wrap this up. But what's the best advice you've ever gotten from anyone?
Um, there's a lot of great things I've been told, but um, I wouldn't say like advice, but it was just like words that somebody told me. And I had this boxing coach, very random. Like I was just training boxing for conditioning, and his name was Jerry, and he'd come Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'd be dead from practice, and I would have boxing for an hour and kind of a lifting session after too. And he just like, after I just was dying in sweat and just, tired, he just like looked at me. He's like, dude, like, you just got it. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you just have that like persona to you. Like, you have what it takes. And I didn't understand it. I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm in junior college. Like, I don't even know if I'm going to play college, Division I baseball again. But he saw something in me that I didn't even see myself. And I think that's so important for coaches to, whether it's a boxing coach or your head baseball coach, any kind of words that you say to somebody, whether they're true or not, has an immediate impact on somebody. And so that's like my advice. And that's what I take pride in when I train these players is like, whenever I have like say something, I make sure to really like be honest and tell them like if I see something that's like different, I'm like, hey, like you got it. Like you have what it like, I make sure that they feel like what they're doing like is worth it almost. And like they're coming out of their way to go hit with you, or they're doing extra boxing lessons, like, say like whatever's in your head, like that coach didn't have to tell me what he was thinking, but he did. And it really like changed the way that I go about my business. And like to this day, every time I have a bad day, I'm just like, hey man, like you got what it takes. You got it. You have it. And so that's kind of like the best advice that I've gotten. I don't know if it's considered advice, but
I,
just kind of something that like really motivates me to this day. And that was 3 years ago.
I guess that's kind of what I was really looking for. And what's the best advice? And this is my last question. What's the best you advice to anyone you've like coached or just anyone who's just aspires to, be like you, be Nick Lopez, do what Nick Lopez does?
Don't be afraid of being you. I think you should embrace everything that God has given you. There's so many things that people might think that might be weird about you, that might think that you act a certain way and you shouldn't act that way. But if you truly believe in what you do and you truly believe that this is what you want to do and you're going to go all in on it, do it. The only person holding you back is you. And a great example was like the first time I really started the podcast and like putting myself out there. I was really like nervous about like, oh man, like what are my teammates going to say and this and that. And I began to realize that like nobody really cared. It wasn't like, oh, Nick Lopez posted a podcast today. Like, let's make fun of him. Like, it was, that's what I was thinking in my head. But like, none of that stuff happened. And nobody like cares in the sense of like, it's not like weird, go and do what you want to do, have fun with it. And what I've really noticed is that when people can see how much you take pride in what you love to do, they want to support it. They want to be a part of it. How can I help? How can I be a part of this? And it's really cool to see that like happening right now for me is like, oh, like how do I be a part of Leisure House and this and that? And it was just me taking the chance of just like making my first podcast post. And now I don't even think twice when I post something. And so my last piece of advice, I know there's a lot, but be a good person. That's like the biggest key, I think, for anybody to take away from this is like you could be the smartest person in the world, but if you're not a good person, like nobody's gonna want to work with you. And so I'm not the smartest person in the world, and I just make sure that I am a good person daily. And it's people are more attracted to working with you when you're just a good person. You're willing to go out of your way to make someone's day, or you throw a little donation at the checkout at the grocery store. Like anything you can do to just really be a good person, just do it as much as you can. So,
Right. That's all I got for you. Nick Lopez, thank you so much for your time today. It has been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you and hear your story really firsthand in just one sitting like this.
yeah, thank you, Crash. This was honestly a great experience being a part of your podcast, and I'm excited for what's to come for you, man. Like you're going out of your comfort zone and you're doing this, and this I think is going to be really special.
Yeah, I'm
So thank you
really
for
looking
having me.
forward to all of it. Thank you again to everyone who tuned in for the entire thing. Thank you so much. Thank you again for all your support to the podcast. And also make sure to go support Nick and his work. Follow him on Instagram again at Dimitri.Lopez underscore and at Leisure House. That's with two E's at the end. I'll see you all on Monday and I'll recap women's basketball in the Vegas Bowl since I'll be at both of those. Nick, you gonna watch that Vegas Bowl tomorrow?
Absolutely. I'll turn it on.
All
I'll tune
right.
in.
All right, that's all we got for you today. I'll see you all Monday and fight on.
Fight on. Let's go.